Hi, sorry for that really abrupt ending. I guess if you didn't read the description, and just at one point I just thought, like, you know what, there's no way I'm gonna make like a 2 hour video of a giant ranking, so I just decided to split the video in two parts because I thought that'd be a lot easier. So yeah, this is the remainder of my list. If you haven't seen the first part, then check it out before I know. Otherwise, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. What was I talking about again in my last one? Oh yeah, the cow movie. Yeah, Barnyard's good. It's yeah, even though a lot, like I said, a lot of the jokes really just feel like they were just made for the trailer. There still is a lot of heart to it. There's a lot of likable characters and some okay mid 2000s Nickelodeon animation. It's overall a good movie. It's okay. It's not a classic. I mean, I didn't really care much for the TV show, but the movie itself I still think is pretty entertaining for what it is. So, yeah, Barnyard's not an animated classic, but I do like it. Right. And 23rd place is The Spiderwick Chronicles. A pretty underrated movie, I'm not gonna lie. I really, really enjoyed this one. You remember how I said when I talked about Monster Trucks about how like it's Monster Trucks is a really dull looking movie. It's not really pleasant. It's just gray skies like and dirt hills and that's really it. This movie it's not full of a bunch of rainbow colors, but at least it looks interesting. Yeah, it looks interesting. Like there's lots of because given it's a dark fantasy movie, lots of the visuals are really good. Like even for a live action Nickelodeon movie, lots of the CGI is quite good. Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of really unique creatures. Like there's these little troll things. What that's played by Martin Short. One of them is, and he's this creature. And when he turns angry, he turns into this little green troll ogre thing, which I thought was kind of a fun concept. There's this one creature that looks like a pig who's voiced by Seth Rogen. Okay, what is it with Seth Rogen playing pig-like characters? Hold on, I have a battery warning. Yeah, lots of the like even like there's lots of like weird like dog goblin kind of things. Like lots of the creatures look really cool and interesting. It definitely looks like something out of a children's fantasy book. This is based on a book series which I never read. I don't know anything about. I know there was going to be a Disney Plus show, but of course tax write-offs happened, so it didn't. So it's not going through. Although actually, I think I read one streaming service did pick it up. I could be wrong actually, but I think I did hear that a Spiderwick Chronicles show was getting made, but was picked up. But oh, back to the movie. I thought it was a unique idea for film. I mean, yeah, the plot's kind of a typical like okay, this isn't a horror movie because obviously it's for kids, but it's kind of that horror movie or like fantasy film type film where like a family moves into a new house and then they realize that there's something dangerous and yeah, it's basically that kind of movie. But overall, it's a pretty good film. I think it has some pretty good effects for the time for this kind of kids movie. I think all the kids do really good. Freddie Highmore plays a double role actually because he plays a Jared and I don't remember what the other brother's name was, but yeah, that technology is always cool when they make like two people where they make an actor play two or more characters. That's always cool, and it was a unique thing to see. So yeah, for a Nickelodeon movie, yeah, lots of the effects were really really good. So Spider-Man Chronicles is actually an underrated movie. If you never saw it and have a knack for dark children's fantasy movies, I think this is a good one to watch. I do really like it. And next place is The Adventures of Tintin. This movie was really good. It definitely doesn't really feel like a typical animated Nickelodeon movie. Like, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying because it's serious. This is a comedy. It's pretty silly. But it has a Tintin vibe because this is based on a series of books of comic strips or wait, were they comic books or strips? I think they were comic strips, kind of like Garfield, where it's just a book with. Anyway, yeah, I don't really know anything about Tintin besides this movie. But from what this movie showed is that he's an adventurer. He has a dog named Snowy. There's this alcoholic ship captain. That's really all I know. But it was a fun film, a really good treasure hunting type film. Lots of people do compare this to Raiders of the Lost Ark, given Steven Spielberg directed it. Yeah, Steven Spielberg directed a Nickelodeon movie. Try running that sentence through your brain and try not to have your mind blown. But yeah, and the animation is very good, and it's that CGI style where they try to make the characters look authentic, like real people. And I know lots of people are divided on that style. I'm somewhere in the middle, kind of. Like, at times, yeah, it feels pointless to make characters look real when the whole thing is that it's supposed to be animated. But on the other hand, it's neat. Like, you do got to admire all the work and detail that goes into making these characters, or even some props. Like, one scene has Tintin holding a gun, and it looks pretty authentic. So I do really give it a lot of credit for that. Like, it's worthy of a lot of praise. I think it's a very fun movie, especially like not just for kids. I think adults can really get a kick out of this movie too because it's not your typical Nickelodeon movie. Like it's actually pretty fun. It's genuinely good. I mean, there is there was going to be a sequel which unfortunately we're never going to get. I know it's not officially canceled, but it's just in development hell. But at this point, it's been way too long. I don't think we're going to get it at this point, but either way, this movie is good. I do think it's a really underrated movie. Definitely one of the most underrated movies of the last decade. So, yeah. And next place is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. And yes, I will get to the first one very, very soon. Uh, I did rewatch all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies before Mutant Mayhem came out, except for the third one, because that movie sucks. And upon rewatching it, I do like it, although it is a step down from the first, because this movie kind of seems to have the same problem X-Men The Last Stand had, although, to be fair, X-Men The Last Stand was a bad movie. This, I could at least call good, because there was still enough in this movie I did like. At least it wasn't too jumbled. At least nothing in this movie was really distracting, but like X-Men The Last Stand, this movie had like 50 plots in one movie. It was about them fighting Bebop and Rocksteady. Then Donatello was looking for a cure that makes them turn human. Then Krang arrives, and then at the end there's a big Technodrome because why not? And like the Technodrome should have been for the final movie. I'm not one of those people who always complain about superhero movies saying you need like 50 movies about a character before a team up movie. I'm not like one of those people. I'm just saying you should focus on a different plot for each movie because this movie feels like they just wanted to cram in everything longtime Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans wanted to see. And I really don't want to use the term fan service, but because I would have loved to see Krang in the Technodrome and Dimension X on screen, but I would have rather waited for another movie. I just want to see Bebop and Rocksteady. I don't want everything else in the same thing. And it doesn't help. This movie's not even 2 hours. So they just cram it in a pretty short movie. So there was no point. But in hindsight, I suppose it worked because this movie didn't do well financially and we didn't get a third one. So I guess that's out of the window. So I guess they dodged a bullet. So I guess it pretty much aged in the best ways. So, but it's fun. Like it kind of does feel like a modernized take of the 80s cartoon. Well, yeah, kind of maybe the 80s cartoon, but a lot of the 2012 Nickelodeon show as well because uh, unlike the 80s cartoon, I feel this movie and the 2012 show did something that lots of Turtles media fails to do it, give the Turtles different personalities. And I'll get to that when I talk about, well, a certain some of maybe some other Turtle movies later in this video. But yeah, Out of the Shadows, it was good, even though if it was a little jumbled, and even if the story was felt really every lots of story elements felt shoehorned and never really felt consistent. I at least do give them credit for trying to do stuff. So it's a fun movie, if not really flawed. And in next place is the Wild Thornberrys movie. I always thought the Wild Thornberrys was an underrated show. I mean, it's not obscure or anything. It's just when lots of people talk about Nicktoons, I don't really hear much people talk about Wild Thornberrys, or maybe that's just me. But I always liked it. I used to watch it with my mom and dad growing up, and I always thought it was a good show. And this movie is quite good. It's basically it feels like a long episode of the show just with more expensive animation, which is what a lot of movies based on cartoons are like. And I like it. The plot is very much Wild Thornberrys-esque. Eliza goes around in a certain country and then she meets up with an animal, and of course the animal's in some kind of danger, and she has to get herself into a wacky situation with Darwin. Yeah, it's basically an episode of Wild Thornberrys, just longer, but I guess if you have a formula, you stick with it. And it really did help that there was a lot to this movie's story that helped, because the main big plot of this movie is that Eliza loses her powers because she was being interrogated, and the guy interrogating her was threatening to hurt Debbie. She sacrificed her breaking the rule just to save her sister. And it does have a lot. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good message for kids now that I think about it. Sometimes breaking the rules is okay if it's meant to, uh, if you're just fighting for someone you love, and that's a really good message for kids. I mean, I do appreciate other stories that pretty much say just do this, follow the rules, and you'll be a good person. But I also like movies like this that say, hey, sometimes it might feel scary to break a rule, but hey, if it gets you somewhere and it's for a good cause, might as well do it. So I really appreciate for that. So yeah, the Wild Thornberrys movie. If you haven't seen the show, I mean, you don't really have to watch the show first, but I would recommend it probably so you get a really good understanding of what the movie will be like. Although they pretty much explain everything in the beginning of the movie for newcomers, so you won't feel lost. But the Wild Thornberrys movie, it's good for a movie based on a pretty underrated Nicktoon. Next is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. I'm going to talk about this when I get to my top 10 of this year, so I'm just going to keep this one really quick. As a Turtles fan, I really liked it. Even though the animation really was trying to be like Spider-Verse, this time it's one of probably the only time an animated movie doing that trend actually worked, given this is also a comic book movie. And I liked seeing all the wacky, weird characters that the TMNT franchise brings, so it was good to have them their chance to shine, so I did really like it. And finally, speaking of Turtles, this won't be the last Turtles movie on this list, I promise you. The first one, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes, I like this movie. Is it great? I won't say exactly, but I did really like it. I know everybody said this movie ruined Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I don't know, lots of it felt like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to me. I mean, it's about four turtles. They went in the sewer. They found some ooze, and it turned them into humanoid mutants. And they practice ninjutsu. Yeah, it's a Turtles movie. I mean, okay, to be fair, I guess that is just the bare bones. Sometimes you really do need to go deeper. Uh, but the movie was good. In fact, you can remember how I said, like, lots of the TMNT media, the Turtles have the same personalities? This is actually one of the few TMNT projects where I feel the Turtles actually felt different. Because Michelangelo is really the only goofy one in this movie, and aside from the like I said, aside from the 2012 Nickelodeon show, I don't think any other TMNT project really portray is Michelangelo as the comic relief because everybody is the comic relief in most other TMNT projects. But it's fun. I mean, and Shredder was cool. Was a really cool design. I mean, I know a lot of people hated him because he looked like a transformer, and yeah, I guess to be fair, I can see that. But he's like Silver Samurai in the Wolverine. He may look different and maybe a little too um, his design might be too extreme, but it was interesting for a change, and it kind of made him look more threatening instead of just wearing a typical Halloween costume. Because comic accurate suit does not equal comic accurate character. People really need to know that. I do really hate how they changed Splinter's origin story, and yes, I know Splinter was never really consistent with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because, like in the comics and the 90s live action movie, he was the pet rat of a sensei, and then the guy died, so he took over. But in the cartoons, they thought that was too depressing for kids, so they just made him the sensei, and he just mutated into a rat. Here, he was he was the pet rat of April. Actually, all of them, including the turtles, were April's pets, which that's not bad. But what really was the problem is how he became who he was. After he mutated, he found a book in the sewer and and trained himself how to be a sensei. A book? Really? That's how Splinter learns to become a sensei. That's how he learns ninjutsu. He just walks around in the sewer and finds a book of how to do ninjutsu? That's stupid. Like that's no, that's not stupid. That's lazy. That's lazily stupid. It's lazily stupid. But and Megan Fox played April, and I actually liked her in the role. I know a lot of people said she was the worst thing about this movie, and it focused too much on her. Yeah, I guess in a way she really did feel like the main character. Although I do like that they at least tried to give her an arc and personality, because April's not a bad character. It's just I feel in a lot of stuff she's just the girl, and she's a news reporter, and she just gets herself in danger. But in this movie, they tried to make her unique, at least stand out. They tried to give her more of a personality. Not that she didn't have any in the comics or anything like that. It's just here they wanted to flesh her out more. So I do give them credit for that. And yeah, the movie is good. I think it's underrated. I did see this in theaters. I remember like a day after it came out, and I really enjoyed it back then, and I still enjoy it to this day. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think, is a good movie. And 17th place is Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. A pretty underrated movie. Um, I know this movie, like, I guess it was kind of well known. I mean, when this movie came out, it was Nickelodeon's highest grossing movie, but not a lot of people really talk about it, and maybe it's because it never took off, because this was supposed to be a film franchise similar to Harry Potter, but I guess the movie didn't do well enough to have a sequel, so. But I really liked it. I mean, I know my mom didn't really like it much, because she thought it was too depressing for a kid's movie, and I guess it kind of is. A group of orphans go in and find out that they need to be um, looked after by a guy named Count Olaf, who really hates the kids. He treats them like slaves and dirt, and he only wants to have them because their parents left behind an enormous fortune when they died. Yeah, that's probably one of the most cliched plots of a kids movie. A guy tries to adopt a miserable person tries to adopt children just to inherit money. Although that's also a thing about marriage. A guy tries to marry, or a girl tries to marry someone for their money, and the kids try to stop it. Yeah, that's a really, really cliched story. But this one still did make it work because it focused on the kids, and it was more about them protecting their lives more so than stopping him from getting rich. And The movie's at least stylish. Oh, sorry, my throat is hecka dry. I need to drink. And yeah, the movie it's stylistically good. Like I said, like just like the Spiderwick Chronicles, it's not overly colorful, but it does look visually great. At least, even though it's not colorful, like it's at least stylistically dreary. Like when you see Count Olaf's mansion, like it looks like a really great set, almost something out of a Tim Burton movie. And lots of the other, and like there's like a window that's shaped like a giant eye, and it looks really cool. It's a very good looking film production wise. I think it's really good, and it shows that you don't need bright rainbow colors to have good visuals. So yeah, Lemony Snicket, it's a series of unfortunate events. It was good. I mean, for a Nickelodeon movie, like it was one of their darker ones. Although I guess to be Jim Carrey played Count Olaf, and Jim Carrey sometimes just acts like himself. I guess maybe they just didn't want to make the movie too dark, so they tried to make Count Olaf a little more funny. So, but the movie is pretty underrated. I think it's really good, and of course, we're not going to see a sequel anytime soon because the kids are all grown up, and Jim Carrey. I hear Jim Carrey's supposed to be considering retiring from acting, so yeah. But it's a good film. I do think it's really underrated. And next is just like how I talked about the remake, this is the original Snow Day. Yeah, I really like Snow Day. I watch this every winter. In fact, this movie was actually filmed in my hometown, fun fact. So that's pretty cool. And the movie is really fun. Just like how I said in the remake, it's very Nickelodeon-esque. Like, it's very over the top and entertaining. Like, it's supposed to be about kids trying to stop a guy from plowing snows off the road so that they don't have to go to school. Like, that very much is very Nickelodeon-esque. In fact, the writers of this movie wrote The Adventures of Pete and Pete, and this exactly feels like an episode of Pete and Pete. So I guess I think I actually once read this was supposed to be a Pete and Pete movie, but they just scrapped it and made it a totally different, unrelated thing. And but you can still feel that writing style in it, so that's what makes it really fun. And of course, there's a lot of goofy visual jokes, and there's there's a lot of slapstick. I mean, there's some fart jokes here and there. Yeah, some of the jokes are kind of stupid, but again, it's a kids movie. You gotta deal with it, but it's really fun. Chevy Chase is in the movie as well. He's always funny. I always like to see him and stuff. And Josh Peck, who this was around the time he was on the Amanda Show. This was before Drake and Josh. Yeah, because Josh Peck was starting to be everywhere on Nickelodeon. Like shortly after this movie came out, so this was kind of his thing. But Snow Day, it's really fun. It's ridiculous. It's corny, but what else do you want in a Nickelodeon comedy? That's pretty much all you want, and I like it for that. In next place is this movie is based on one of the most divisive, probably even panned Nicktoons of recent years, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. I actually do like the show. Like I said, how in most Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles projects that all the characters act the same. Lots of people hate the show for that, but I didn't hate it for that, honestly, because I'm too used to it in other Turtles projects, so I just went with it as is. But I think this movie is even better than the show, and I like the show. Like, the show's like a modernized version of the 80s cartoon. This movie, it's like a good finale, because this came out like 2 years after the show or something. Yeah. And it's about them stopping a bunch of Krang because in the 2012 show, Krang became a species of alien and there was more of them, whereas the 80s cartoon where he was introduced, Krang was one guy. But it was really fun. It was good to finally see some action. There's like some cool apocalyptic settings. The animation is extremely good, especially for TV standards, I mean, this was a Netflix movie, and it felt like it really just had the same budget as the show. I mean, lots of shows now look movie quality, so I guess it's got that. And it was really fun. This would have been in my top 10 of last year, but it didn't make it. This would have made an honorable mention because I really, really enjoyed it. Like, the show was good, but this was really good. I think it's so far the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie Nickelodeon themselves have made. So I did really like it. So I think it's a really underrated movie, and as a TMNT fan, I was really happy with it. Next place is in number 14 is Charlotte's Web, the live action one, because, well, Nickelodeon wasn't even a thing when the animated one came out. But yeah, I think this is a good movie. I do like the animated one as well, although I haven't seen it in an extremely long time. So, okay, maybe I can't really say what I think of the animated one if it's been so long, because who knows, it might not hold up, but I like this one. I think it's very cute. It's it's very much, if you know the Charlotte's Web story. I mean, okay, that's a stupid thing to say. Everybody knows the Charlotte's Web story. I mean, Charlotte's Web was one of my favorite books as a kid, so I did really like this movie. We all know the story. It's about a girl who takes care of a pig after realizing it's going to be sent to the slaughterhouse, and then the pig finds out that he's going to get eaten, and then he meets a spider who makes a web with a bunch of words in it to astound people and distract them from the fact that they're going to eat Wilbur. And yeah, it's good. And the CGI is amazing. Like, for a Nickelodeon kids movie, like the CGI looks amazing. Like, even by today's standards, like, this movie is like, it's nearly 17 years old. Jeez, it's been that old. It's been that long. And even by today's standards, it looks really good. It's very charming. It's really sweet. It's cute. Like, there's a lot of cute animals. The characters are really likable, and it has a really talented voice cast. Julia Roberts plays Charlotte. Steve Buscemi is the rat. Robert Redford was the horse. John Cleese was the sheep. I think Kathy Bates was in this movie. Yeah. Oprah Winfrey and Cedric the Entertainer played Geese, and it had a pretty good cast for this kind of movie, even though it didn't really need to have such a huge cast. But it was a fun film. It has really good effects. It's very cute. It's lighthearted. It doesn't really feel very Nickelodeon-ish, but you know what? I like that they did something different. Just like Fun Size, I like that they wanted to do something new. And next place is Rugrats Go Wild. Yeah, we're getting to the Rugrats movies this time. This movie's pretty good. I do agree. Everybody always says this is the weakest of the Rugrats movies, and it is. And this movie is flawed. But I still like it. Yeah, this is a crossover movie that pretty much just feels like a long TV episode. It didn't really feel theatrical worthy. Actually, the funny thing is, this actually was meant to be a television movie, but then they decided to release it theatrically just because. And maybe part of that's just because they got Bruce Willis to play Spike, and they just wanted a big name to put on the poster. And yeah, Bruce Willis does play Spike, because Spike talks in this movie because he meets up with Eliza. And, you know, Bruce Willis did sound like he was having fun. I love him in everything he's in. I mean, he doesn't act anymore, because he has he has dementia, so he can't really process uh, a lot of his work. But he was a great actor. I've always loved him, and he does bring a good voice to Spike. Like, he's not really the kind of person you'd expect to be in a Rugrats movie, but it was just kind of funny to see how Spike, the dog from Rugrats, is voiced by the guy who plays John in Die Hard. Like, it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, the movie, it's quite good. The story's really standard. It's formulaic. It's just a survival story. There's way too many subplots, but even though it's the weakest Rugrats movie, I still like it. So, in 12th place is Clock Stoppers. A pretty underrated movie, honestly. For a Nickelodeon movie, this was pretty good. I mean, especially for 2002, because when you think of 2002 Nickelodeon movie, you'd probably think of, something like Snow Day, where it just feels like a sitcom episode. But this movie, it doesn't actually. It at least tries to feel like a movie. It's a sci-fi film, so lots of the effects aren't great. Some of them are okay, but for the most part, they're not really. But it does have a neat idea of a watch that could freeze time. I mean, freezing time has been a idea in so much works of fiction, but I don't think there's really ever been a full movie about it. So this was pretty interesting. You get, of course, lots of the time freezing stuff is kind of played as jokes. Like the beginning of the movie, like he brings a possum into the main kid brings a possum into his girlfriend's house because she was trying to because they were cleaning the yard and they found a possum and then it keeps running around like it's so crazy. And there's a part where they find this meter maid and the girl up Francesca, that's the girl's name. She says that lady's always giving me party tickets, and they see a dog pissing near a tree, and what do? They place the pissing dog in the meter maid car. So yeah, it's very silly, but it does have some cool concepts. It's very unique. It was fun to see Nickelodeon do a sci-fi comedy film that feels very sci-fi-esque, but also feels like something they make, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, Clockstoppers, it's underrated. It's actually not bad. It really doesn't get talked about in terms of Nickelodeon movies, and I think it's pretty good. 11th place is the Rugrats movie, the one that started it all. Well, the one that started the Rugrats trilogy, and it's good. It's very much an extended Rugrats episode, but does try to feel like a movie. The animation is definitely more expensive looking. Uh, they try to make the story a lot bigger by having the babies get lost in a forest instead of just them get running around a building. Like in every episode of Rugrats, they just like run around a building or something that their parents take them in. But this one they get lost in the woods, and it's very much a basic sibling rivalry story because this movie was the introduction of Dill Pickles, who's Tommy's brother, and yeah, it's the typical kind of that jealous pet storyline. Although, or I guess in this case, it's a jealous baby storyline where Tommy's tired of Dill getting all the attention, and since Angelica's a brat and she likes to lie to babies, she says that when they get a new baby, they're not going to care about him anymore. But it's good. Like it does have its dark moments. Sometimes they get lost in the forest, and of course they get scared. Oh, they run into a wolf, and like it tries to be a Rugrats episode, but have enough material and story for a movie, and I think they did really well with it. So the Rugrats, yeah, it's a classic Nickelodeon movie. I know a lot of people did grow up with this around when it came out, and yeah, it is a really good movie. Okay, now we're getting to the top 10, so we're getting pretty close to the end. 10th place is Hey Arnold the movie. I love this movie. I do love Hey Arnold. I think it's one of the best Nicktoons. It's one thing I love about Hey Arnold is that it doesn't really feel like most other Nicktoons. It feels very much more down to earth and more quiet. It's not really zany, and it does have a lot of good morals. And it's overall a fantastic show. But this movie, okay, it's not as strong as the show, but I do still like it. The plot is very unoriginal. It doesn't really have that strong wit that the show had, but I do think that the plot was at least kind of interesting. I mean, it was pretty bland. A giant landlord wants to uh, take down a city to make room for something else because this guy wants to replace it with a giant mall. Yeah, that's a really cliched story. Actually, apparently this actually was supposed to be kind of like Rugrats Go Wild. This was supposed to be an extended episode of the show, but they just released it in theaters and sold it as a movie apparently because there was a made-for-TV movie that came out later called Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie, which somehow was actually better because that actually felt like a movie, but that was supposed to be the Hey Arnold movie, but it didn't come out because this movie bombed, but it came on TV years later, and I'm not including this because Nickelodeon Movies did not release that. But the movie is good. Like it, even though it's very formulaic and it's really safe and extremely short, it still is good. As a Hey Arnold, as someone who loves Hey Arnold, I think as a movie it could have been a lot worse. So I do really enjoy it. All right, ninth place is the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. Yeah, we're finally getting to the SpongeBob movies, and I do think this. I think everybody agrees this is the weakest SpongeBob movie, but me, I like it. I think it's good. I know lots of people hate it because it's basically just a pilot for Camp Coral, but it's not really. I don't think Camp Coral is that bad. I've seen a few episodes, and I mean, I would never watch it over the actual SpongeBob show, but I don't think it's so bad. And and yeah, most of those Camp Coral stuff scenes are just flashbacks, and to be honest, I think they could have been cut out. Not because I don't want to be reminded of a SpongeBob spinoff. It's because most of the time they just felt pointless. Like the movie shows that SpongeBob and Gary met at Camp Coral, even though if you watch the show, you know SpongeBob adopted Gary at a shelter, and the fact that there's even one scene there's a flashback where it shows Squidward losing a talent show and he gets sad about it. So SpongeBob comforts him and then they become friends. Even though if you saw SpongeBob, you would know that Squidward never met SpongeBob until he moved in next to him. And plus, they're like the same age. Isn't Squidward supposed to be like 20 years older than SpongeBob? Or I don't know how old anyone is in this show. And yeah, even the plot was just about SpongeBob trying to find Gary, which was an episode of the show. But you know what? Retreats aside, this movie was still good because at least I laughed and I had a fun time. And this was the first movie I saw in theaters ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, and it wasn't a bad one to go into. I thought it was a really fun film. I thought it was really funny. I still laughed a lot because it's SpongeBob. SpongeBob is just one of my comfort things. I just like to watch it, and even though this is the weakest of the three SpongeBob movies, I still really like it. And number eight is a movie that I just talked about, Good Burger 2. I loved this movie. It was a movie that really didn't really need to exist, but it was really better than it should have been, and I absolutely loved it. It was everything I wanted from a Good Burger sequel. It was funny, it was wacky, it was over the top, it was just a feel good family movie. And it doesn't top the first movie, but it really does have that same kind of humor. It didn't feel modernized really. If like if the I don't know if this movie had the same writers as the first. Did it? I don't know. But if it didn't, this feels like a movie, like if the writers of the first movie actually did come back to do a second one, it would very much be like this. And Keenan and Kel, they both work really well with each other still. I really think they fit into their roles like a glove. Like Kel Mitchell, despite his age, is still really good as Ed, and even Keenan Thompson, lots of his line delivery I think is a lot better. Not that he was bad in the first Good Burger movie, but he's had a lot more experience with comedies, like with SNL, given how long he's been on there, and the movie they do kind of repeat some of the same jokes of the first movie, but at least there was still some new material enough for me to laugh at. So I did really love it for that. So Yeah, Good Burger 2, I really loved it. It was very fun, and I couldn't have been happier with it. Seventh place is Rango, an Oscar-winning Nickelodeon movie. No, seriously, this movie actually won an Oscar. It really did. And it definitely was worthy of an Oscar. I really, really liked this movie. It really, kind of like The Adventures of Tintin, it didn't really feel like a Nickelodeon movie, or I guess this movie was more of a comedy than Tintin was. Um, Although it didn't really look like a Nickelodeon movie, like the animation style, like it wasn't all bright and colorful, and the characters didn't look cartoony really. Lots of them like it was. It took place in a desert, so there's lots of dry sand and stuff, and it looks really dreary. And some of the characters look ugly, but you know what? That's kind of what makes it cool. Like it stands out from other anime movies. It doesn't feel like a typical DreamWorks or Pixar movie. It's a movie on its own, and yeah, the story itself, it's not anything original. Like it's about a chameleon who finds a town and becomes a sheriff and lies about how he's a really successful outlaw, and of course he everybody finds out he's a liar. So, but that aside, it's a really good film. I do like its western callbacks. It was very unique for an animated kids movie, and it's pretty edgy for a Nickelodeon animated movie. Like lots of the visuals and even some of the themes are pretty adult for a Nickelodeon movie. Like compared to something like Wonder Park or Barnyard or something, like this really felt more adult oriented. But that's what makes it good. I really enjoyed it for that. So Rango is a very good movie, and it has a really good cast too. Johnny Depp, Isla Fisher, Ned Beatty, Alfred Molina, uh, Bill Nye, not the science guy, the British actor who played Davy Jones in Pirates. Um, but yeah, Rango is really good. I love it. In sixth place is the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water, the second SpongeBob movie, and lots of people I remember hated this movie when it came out, and I guess a big part of that's because the trailer lied, and even the title lied. They don't even go out of water until the climax. Like only in like the third act in like the last 20 minutes they go out of water. So most of the movie's just time travel. And the whole plot is that they're just looking for the Krabby Patty formula. So this movie really should have been called the SpongeBob movie, The Search for the Krabby Patty Formula. Actually, that doesn't really roll off the tongue good, so I guess that's probably why they didn't go with it. But it's really fun. It's very much what you expect from SpongeBob. It's really wacky, it's surreal and trippy, and like there's lots of weird moments, like a time. There's SpongeBob and Plankton time travel, and you get some really weird visuals with that. And they come across a space time traveling talking dolphin and who can breathe on air, and it's weird, but it's really fun. It's SpongeBob, like it's just goofy fun, and so yeah, it's definitely not the first movie, which I will get to, but I still really liked it. I think, and while the first movie focused more on SpongeBob and Patrick, this movie focused on a lot more characters. But I get why the first movie didn't really. So I do at least like that this movie tried to include more of the cast of characters because there's also a lot of good characters in SpongeBob. SpongeBob and Patrick aren't the only good characters. So yeah, I do really like this movie. So in fifth place is Rugrats in Paris the movie. I think this is the best Rugrats movie. I think it has the most unique story, it has the most heart, the most emotion, and it doesn't really feel formulaic, really. I mean, the first one was, a jealous pet story. The no, a jealous, not a jealous, kind of a jealous pet story, but this case was siblings. The third was a survival movie. This one, okay, I guess to be fair, there has been other kids movies about, you know, kids not wanting their single parents to marry a really mean person, but I think it does work well with this movie because of the theme. the whole idea and theme of this movie is that Chucky wants a mom, and it's pretty sad. Like it's pretty emotional. Like there's a lot of scenes that showcase that Chucky really wants a mom because everybody else, all his other friends have one, and you do legit feel sad for him, especially given that Chucky's the coward of the group. Lots of things scare him, so the fact that he doesn't have someone who will love and protect him just like his father is kind of scary to him. So I really get what they were going. And the Paris setting was really nice. I mean, there was really no point in making this movie set in Paris because the whole thing is that they're going to Paris because Stu has to build a Reptar theme park and which is Japanese themed. Yeah, they have a Japanese themed theme park in Paris. I mean, there was one scene where it showed Spike pissing on the Eiffel Tower. Oh, now I see why this movie was set in Paris, just for that one stupid joke. But that aside, I do really like the movie. I think it's one of Nickelodeon's best animated movies. It's a lot of fun, and it has a lot of emotion to it. It's the perfect blend of heart, humor, and just really good animation. So, yeah. And fourth place is Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. Yeah, the movie that started it all before it became one of the biggest Nicktoons of the 2000s at least. We had this movie, and while I do like the show more, I think the show was a lot more funny and creative. This movie was still great. I really thought it was charming. But I guess to be fair, I guess this movie was supposed to have a plot that was huge enough for a movie. Lots of Jimmy Neutron episodes are about him inventing something and it screws up, and you can't really do that in a full 80-minute movie, so they tried to do their best. And like the Hey Arnold movie, the plot is pretty basic. Like all the kids want their parents to just wish they didn't have parents so they can have freedom. And of course, when they experience it, they realize just how much they miss them. It's like, but like a lot of other animated Nickelodeon movies, despite its unoriginality, its heart's in the right place, and the characters are all great. So that really does make it better. So, yeah, Jimmy Neutron, the Boy Genius, while the show is definitely an improvement, I still think this is a great movie. Third place is Nacho Libre, an underrated masterpiece. And no, I'm kidding. But I do love this movie. This is one of those movies that just makes me laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. It's really funny. It's real. My uncle and I used to watch this movie when I was a kid, and I would always laugh. And the plot is pretty much just Here Comes the Boom, but with wrestling and Mexicans and orphanages. But okay, to be fair, this movie came out before Here Comes the Boom, but it's about this religious man who works at an orphanage who's played by Jack Black, and has to raise a lot of he has to raise a lot of money for his poor orphanage, so he decides to become a wrestler. And wrestling is apparently a sin in his religion, so he does it in secret. But then he realizes that then he hears from a nun that if he fights for someone he loves, then God will bless him. And you know what? That's actually a good lesson. I know that's a really cliched lesson in kids' movies and shows about like how fighting is bad or fighting isn't always the answer. Or fighting could be good in self-defense. No, this is a good lesson. Like sometimes fighting can be okay. I mean, what if your intent isn't retaliation, or if your intent isn't harming, and if it's just for a good cause and wanting it for someone you love, then it's good. It's okay. And there's a lot of goofy humor. Jack Black does a fake Hispanic accent. And Jack Black is not played by. Jack Black is not a real Hispanic wrestler. He's not played by a real Hispanic. You know what? I don't even know what people are offended by anymore by today's standards, but I don't know if this movie would be made today. But hey, I'm glad we got it because it's always good for a laugh. I love Nacho Libre. I always love to watch it. In second place is the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I love this movie. I always loved this movie ever since I saw it in theaters as a kid. It's just fun. Like it's really, really fun. It doesn't feel like an extended episode. It legit feels like an actual movie. And a lot of that is because it doesn't even really feel like the show. It it's pretty dark in a lot of scenes. Like the whole thing is that SpongeBob and Patrick go on a big adventure to retrieve a crown that Plank sold into a gift shop on land, and it was to clear Mr. Krabs' name because he was framed for it. And it's really dark, actually. Like, they come across a bunch of monsters that want to eat them. They almost have a near death experience at the gift shop. Plankton hires this assassin to kill them. It was played by Alec Baldwin, by the way. And yeah, that's what I love about some. Unlike a lot of SpongeBob episodes that are just mean spirited for and dark for the sake of being mean spirited and dark, this movie isn't dark to be mean spirited. It's more for thrills because it shows SpongeBob and Patrick in a bunch of areas they're not comfortable with. They're unfamiliar with everything when they're on their journey to Shell City, and that's what I like about it. Like, come on, seeing SpongeBob and Patrick in a thug bar is funny. Like, I especially love that scene where they're at the thug bar, and then they walk in, and Patrick tries to distract everybody, and he's like, "Can I have everyone's attention?" And then they all gang up on him like they just want to kill him, and then he just says, "I have to use the bathroom." Like, this movie's funny. Like, it always cracks me up. I mean, I know it beat for beat. Like, I know it frame by frame, but it still manages to make me laugh. So, yeah, I love SpongeBob, so obviously I love this movie. Gee, what's number one? What could be left? Could it be the first in movie in a sequel that I already talked about that somehow didn't? It's Good Burger. Yeah, of course it's Good Burger. What do you expect? What else can I say about Good Burger I haven't said dozens of times? I love it. It's really funny. It takes a skit from a show and manages to create more characters and a bigger world. I mean, Good Burger is a skit on all that, and it didn't even really need world building, but they managed to set it in a bigger setting, and they managed to make it work. And it's really silly, but what do you expect from Nickelodeon? It's very funny. It's got that Keenan and Kel style of humor of Kel always playing the dumb guy, and there's a lot of slapstick, of course, lots of physical comedy, and it's really ridiculous and silly. This movie is the definitive 90s movie. If you were to ask someone, like, what did kids like in the 90s, it was this. Like, it's very silly. It's dated in the best way. I know. I know I say I hate the word dated, but I really like this movie for that. It's the most 90s kids movie a 90s kids movie can get, or okay, maybe aside from Space Jam. But that aside, this movie really defined what Nickelodeon was like back then. It's very over the top. It's silly. It's just good for laughs. Like, and it has a lot of adult humor, so it's very good for families, not just kids. And I don't know what else to say. It's just an extremely fun movie, and I always love to watch it when I'm in the mood for a laugh, and that's why it's my favorite Nickelodeon movie. I just think it's super funny. There's its heart's in the right place when it needs to be. Like, Ed's a really good character. Ed's not just an idiot. Sometimes he can be smart and save the day, and sometimes he has a really good heart to him because he cares so much about Dexter, his best friend. So yeah, it's got some heart. It's got a lot of humor, and it takes something as simple as two burger places competing with each other and manages to make a pretty entertaining hour and a half comedy. So the fact they took something that could have been so boring and bland and actually made it a pretty entertaining, funny movie really earns my respect. And that's what Nickelodeon does. Lots of them take really weird, ridiculous concepts and make them work, just like Pixar. So yeah, I'm sorry this video was excruciatingly long, but I hope you enjoyed the ranking nonetheless. So yeah, let me know if you have a personal ranking, and or if you don't, or if you disagree, or whatever. But yeah, I'll do an actual movie review next time. So take care, everybody, and I'll see you whenever I return.